my FPL Game Week 15 team selection. Game Week 14 has just finished, and yet we have another deadline tomorrow morning on Saturday. So in today's video, we're going to have a look at how my team is lining up going into Game Week 15. I got 2 free transfers and a couple of things I need to fix. I continue to score very few points in my defense, as I'm sure a lot of you do as well. So I need to use some of my transfers there. But we also have a few other players like Brian and Mbeumo and Semenyo who are not performing very well for me at the moment. So we'll discuss all of that, some potential moves this week and future plans in my Game Week 15 team selection. What is up everyone, FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 1,912 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here as well. And before we have a look at Game Week 15, a quick review of how Game Week 14 went. And unfortunately, it was a reasonable red arrow for me. I scored 55 points, which was 13 below the safety score for me, moving me from 25k to 50k. So I doubled my rank, but it's only a 25k rank change. So still to be 50k at this point of the season is okay. Of course, we don't want to get a few red arrows back to back, but it's okay. There are a few decisions that I made this week, 3 decisions. Basically, if I make any 3 of those decisions differently, I get a flat grey arrow. If I make 2 of the 3 decisions right, I get a green arrow. And if I make all 3 of them right, I'd get a big green arrow. Those 3 decisions were, of course, I sold Alexander Isak to Jackson. Now, I don't think the decision was wrong. My prediction based on minutes was wrong. Like, if Jackson had played the amount of minutes that I thought he would play, I'm happy that I made the transfer because he only played 70 against Villa. He didn't get booked. For me, that just said to me that he was going to start. And Chelsea had so many chances against Southampton that if he'd have started that game, he almost certainly would have had some returns. He didn't play. I got Semenyo in off my bench with 3 points. So that's the first thing I did wrong. I'm not massively concerned going forward about it. Yes, Isak looked fantastic. Yes, Isak got a goal and an assist, but I still like Jackson and I'm going to stick it through. I can't keep chopping back and forth between them. The next one was Mykolenko just being last on my bench. Gabriel didn't feature at all. Lewis came on for like 15 minutes at the end of the game when they were 3-0 up. 8 Nori scored 0 and Grieve scored 1 and Mykolenko. Anyone who's watched this channel this season knows I have I'd say a love-hate relationship, but a hate-hate relationship with Mykolenko at the moment. And I plan on benching him against my captain in Game Week 15. So we all know how that one's going to end. But yeah, that was the second decision. And the third one, of course, comes down to the captaincy. Palmer did get a goal, which he very kindly stole from Nkunku to help us FPL managers out, as he said on his Instagram. But Salah just seems unstoppable at the moment, and that was a big swing. So basically, the Mykolenko decision was worth almost 11, probably 10 over Greaves. Then the Jackson decision, that was worth like 8. The captaincy was worth even more than that. So generally, it's a decision. If I'd have made any of those differently, I would have been looking at a okay game week. So it's not the end of the world. Let me know how you got on. It's very, very quick turnaround, so we can quickly forget about a red arrow, start to look ahead to the upcoming game week. Let me know how you got on next week, but let's have a look at Game Week 15. So I do have 2 free transfers going into Game Week 15, and I probably plan on using both. The first place I plan on using them is Brian and Mbeumo. So that is still, I think, 0.15 expected goals over the past 5 weeks combined with just 1 shot. The upcoming fixtures, again, are not great. They do have Newcastle at home and Forest at home in the next 3. I don't think I'll keep him more than just 1 week. There is part of me that considers just keeping him for this Newcastle at home game and then selling him before Chelsea away. But I do think the sort of data and the performances have not been there. They do have a home game. That's why I'm considering keeping him for 1 more week. Now, I actually don't necessarily need to sell him in terms of price changes. He is predicted to drop on Friday evening before the deadline, but I don't lose any value if he does drop. I can hold on to him for 1 more price change. So he's not a definite sell, but I do think I'll be looking to move him on. The options that we could potentially bring him in. The first one is Cliver. Now, I already own Semenyo, and Cliver actually only just got 60 minutes in the game this evening. And I'm happy that I waited to see that, because actually before that game, he might have been my top transfer target. He is on penalties for Bournemouth. And if he was playing 70-80, which he's done most of the season, then I actually quite like him at his price, and he's much more central than Semenyo is, but Semenyo does have better minutes, and I already own Semenyo. Now, doubling up on Bournemouth midfielders is probably not the best idea. 3 of the next 4, though, are some really nice games, so I wouldn't hate that. The other 2 options, we've got Morgan Rogers. Now, I do have a little bit of doubt in my mind about whether he starts Southampton, but he does feel like a very steady long-term hold for me if I was going to buy him. He's playing number 10 for Aston Villa, who are a Champions League level team at the moment. They're performing well in that tournament, and they finally got back to winning ways this week, and Morgan Rogers did score. probably the most high caliber player. It's just with the Champions League, how many minutes is he going to play? That's the only thing that puts me off. But he is young and he has played a lot of minutes so far this season and not much impact on him as a result. And then the third one I personally don't plan on buying really, is Enzo Fernandez of Chelsea, but I know a lot of you in the comments are asking me to talk about him. Now, as a Chelsea fan, the issue with Enzo Fernandez is, yes, he should be in the team almost every week now. However, the number sort of 10 role that we've seen him play in a couple of games didn't stick in the game against Southampton when Cucurella and Gusto are both in the team, and we don't play a sort of third midfielder alongside Enzo and Caicedo like we did with Lavia the other day. It does mean that it is Gusto and Cucurella that often add a lot of the attacking power to that Chelsea team, and it's not Enzo getting us far forward. Now, it has been Enzo in a couple of games. He is only about 4.9 million. He can sit on my bench most weeks. He would take up a third Chelsea spot, though. I've already got Palmer and Jackson, and I'm not certain I want to add a third Chelsea option. Now, you're probably thinking, well, Harry, there's loads of other options you could buy. I could buy a Jared Bowen. I could buy a Mitoma. I could buy a Spurs midfielder. I could buy an Anthony Gordon, for example. Though when we have a look in a moment at some potential defensive transfers, I'm almost certain I need the money. I need the money to go and upgrade. I don't think those players are massive upgrades on someone like a Rodgers that's worth 2 million. And I think the defensive move I plan is a bigger upgrade. So I do plan on downgrading Mbeumo quite a long way to free up some money. And that second transfer is looking to buy a Liverpool defender. Now, we'll talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold versus Van Dijk in just a moment. But looking at the fixtures they have for about the next 10 game weeks, looking how well they are controlling games and defending for the majority of time is really positive. However, that game against Newcastle, they didn't defend that well. Newcastle got a lot of chances. But if you do look at the fixtures, I do think it's worthwhile going for one of them. Now, it's pretty close between the two. I think Virgil van Dijk will probably get maybe one. I think Trent will probably start 5 out of 6 games and Van Dijk will start all 6 out of 6. But Trent Alexander-Arnold hopefully would get some attacking returns and maybe some bonus points to make it worth your while. And there is a decent chance with the lack of defenders they have that he might just start all of the games. Now, I'm not fully set on Trent, but I do think Trent is the one I'm more likely to go with. Now, in terms of defenders that I would look to sell, Mykolenko, Lewis, Greaves, and Aït-Nouri are all possible sells for me. Mykolenko is the most obvious one because the fixtures are turning to look pretty bad, but he's cheaper than both Lewis and Aït-Nouri. Greaves in there as well, did come back into the team for Ipswich during the midweek. He didn't play very well. He did give up the chance that they did score from and then lose the game. We don't even know if he's going to keep his place going into Bournemouth at home at the weekend. Lewis and Aït-Nouri both have some okay fixtures on the horizon, but they're both not performing well. And they're both, not performing well. Their teams are not playing that well at the moment, and they're the most expensive. So if I wanted to go up to a Trent and a Van Dijk, it would leave me a little bit more money to do some potential further moves. At the moment, I think Rico Lewis is the most likely to get benched and most likely to get sold for me, is just because I'm not certain he starts every week. When he does start, the attacking threat that we'd hope for just isn't really there. They have a few okay games on the horizon, and going from game week 18 onwards, we know the Haaland fixture run doesn't look too bad, but I don't love that. Aït-Nouri has a few weeks left, but they're not playing particularly well. It could be any 4 of these, but I do think Lewis is the most likely at the moment. So just to put that into a bit of perspective of my lineup, we're going to start in goal with David Raya. Again, a clean sheet, 2 clean sheets in the last 3. They just tick along nicely. I'm just happy with him now. They have a pretty decent run. They seem to keep clean sheets maybe when you least expect it. Just start them every week. I know Fabianski has Wolves at home on the bench and they've not been great, but I do still have double Wolves in my lineup and I'm not going to start Fabianski with the way West Ham are defending. Raya and Arsenal have been fantastic defensively recently, so he is in there. Into defence, as I said, we do have Ryan Aït-Nouri at the moment in there. I am going to start him over both Greaves and Mykolenko just based off the fixture. And I do plan on selling Rico Lewis. So Aït-Nouri is in West Ham away. It's a big fixture, right? It's El Sakako, as people like to call it. I like to call it 2 teams going up where their managers are under incredible pressure. It is the Monday night game as well, that if those teams lose, the manager is likely to lose their job. Now, that doesn't necessarily impact anything from an FPL point of view, but it might give Wolves a little bit of an extra because they do like they're still fighting and like the manager when you see them on the pitch at full time and stuff like that. His attacking threat is there, although they haven't been great defensively. I do expect Johnson to come back in for Jose Sarr, which should be a boost because Jose Sarr has made up a lot of individual mistakes recently. Gabriel is in. He's currently a little bit of a doubt going into this fixture. Let's hope he can turn it around and be available because I don't really have that much cover on my bench. We only have Greaves at home to Bournemouth, which isn't that fantastic, but not much I can really do about that. And I've got Mykolenko last on my bench. Maybe I should consider a little bit more putting Mykolenko second sub, but he is going up against Liverpool, so I don't expect that much from him. So it is going to be Greaves. And then the planned transfer is to go with Trent. I haven't made them yet. There is part of me that might think I actually might roll my transfer. Now, Trent is predicted to rise probably in price on Friday evening. And I feel like I've missed a lot of price changes on players I want to buy over the past couple of weeks, which does make me inclined to move a little bit early and go and buy Trent for the Friday evening. I haven't made it, but I do think at time of recording, that is the most likely transfer that I'm going to do in for Rico Lewis, who I just don't love going forward. Into my midfield, I have a little bit of a benching sort of headache. As part of that planned transfer for Trent, I do plan on doing Brian Mbeumo out and going and buying Morgan Rogers, who currently I plan on starting. Semenyo in that game last night for that Spurs Bournemouth game, Semenyo was really deep. He was playing sort of right back at times. Now, that might be just a thing to mark players like Son when he was going to be on the pitch. But then when you look at a matchup like Ipswich, they're going to have a player like Leif Davies on the same side as Semenyo as left back going very, very far forward. I can't decide whether that's going to be good for Semenyo because there's going to be loads of space in behind, or it's going to mean that Semenyo is really defensive again as he was in that fixture. So at the moment, I plan on starting Morgan Rogers, but I do have a bit of a doubt exactly if he's going to start because, of course, he's just played a lot of minutes. And then they have a big Champions League tie on Tuesday evening away at RB Leipzig. And this is a game that we've seen Chelsea rotate heavily and win. And maybe Aston Villa can rotate reasonably heavily and still win this game at home to Southampton. But I do have Rodgers in my starting lineup at the moment if I confirm these transfers, which I haven't done yet. Then we've got the Palmer, Saka, Salah trio. They're going to be in my team for the majority of weeks. I don't plan on doing anything with them. They're all absolutely fantastic midfielders. They're all on top of their game at the moment. I don't really need to talk too much about them. I've had them in my team for quite a few weeks and they are going to stay in there. Then we're moving up front. We've got Jackson, João Pedro and Cunha. I plan on starting all three of those. João Pedro's still not up at playing 90, although he did get an assist on Thursday evening. Cunha has been really disappointing the past couple of games, but he is going up against a West Ham team who have massively struggled defensively. So if he's going to get anything, surely this is a game he can do it. And then Spurs. Now, well, Jackson up against Spurs. Spurs might be without three of their first choice four centre-backs. Davies went off on Thursday with a slight injury. Romero and Van der Ven are still doubts for the weekend at the moment. Now, that might mean Archie Gray is playing at centre-back with Dragusin, Udogie and Porro as their defenders, which I do think means we will get chances, Chelsea, as a team, and I'm happy to have Jackson in there. Yes, if I could have a free hit, would I own Isak or Jackson? I probably would go back to having Isak, but I can't, so I've just got to trust Jackson for the foreseeable. And if he does get booked, I do have Semenyo on my bench for the upcoming weeks to potentially start if I need to. So, two planned transfers of Trent in for Lewis and Rodgers in for Mbeumo. There is part of me that might roll my transfer, especially if I don't think Trent is going to rise in price on Friday, but it does look like he will. In terms of captaincy, it is down to Palmer and Salah again. In theory, I could put it on Saka. He does go away to a Fulham team who've just played really well against Brighton and frustrated very well. Particularly on that right-hand side, Robinson has been very good defensively up against the attacking right wings, and there wasn't very much for Adingra in that game, so I'm not sure I'm going to put it on Saka. Palmer versus Salah is really close. Of course, Palmer is the one that didn't do as well this week. Salah did really well. Salah might have the easier fixture on paper, but is away from home in the 12:30 kickoff, although it's not a very difficult away fixture, is it, from Liverpool to Everton? But at the moment, I can't really see myself putting it anywhere but Mo Salah. There is part of me that wants to continue and just go with Palmer again, because I do think Chelsea will get chances against that Spurs team, and hope Salah doesn't do as much in the early kickoff, but he just seems so inevitable at the moment. And I think, well, I imagine the majority of you will be captaining Salah. Let me know as well who you plan on captaining. Is it just perma-captain Salah? Is that where we're at with the game at the moment? It's not a worst thing. He is on absolute form at the moment. So that is where we're at. That is the Game Week 15 team selection. I plan on making 2 free transfers. I haven't made them yet. I will be keeping an eye on price changes on Friday evening, though. Any questions you have about your team? Would you do those 2 moves? Would you give Brian Mbeumo one more game at home to Newcastle? I could actually bench him and just play Semenyo at home to Ipswich and make the move in Game Week 16. That's something I've also considered, but I do think I'll probably make them if Trent is predicted to rise. Salah with the armband at the moment and Palmer with the vice captaincy. As I said, any questions in the comments. 1,972 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here. There will be a final decisions video out later on today with anything from the press conferences and an update on where I'm at with my transfers and stuff like that as well. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe before you go, and I'll be back again very soon.